The story begins by showing a young man named Martin. He gets acquainted with his seatmate named Matt. On the way, the bus stopped because of engine problems.
Oh, man.
Coincidentally, not far from there is a car rental. Martin decided to continue the journey using the rental car along with his new friend. But on the way, suddenly, their car tire burst. So Matt had to get off to change the car tire. At that time, Martin looked nervous while paying attention to the situation around him. When a car passed by, Martin kicked Matt and caused him to be hit by a speeding car. The accident left the driver of the car dead on the spot. Meanwhile, Martin went to Matt, who was dying. Martin took all of Matt's identities and immediately killed Matt without mercy. Martin then left to continue his journey on foot. The scene moves to 19 years later in Montreal, Canada. At the construction site, heavy machinery excavating found 11 bodies buried with body parts no longer intact. Then a mother reported to officers that she saw her son, who had died 19 years ago on the ship. The old woman was convinced by what she saw and warned officers that her son was dangerous. It is known that there have been several murders over the past 19 years, but the two detectives in charge of the case seemed to find a dead end. Therefore, a special agent named Scott Illeana is assigned to help solve this mystery. That morning, a detective came to Scott, informing her that a man named Clive Morin was found dead in the club's parking lot. A witness named James Costa said he saw the perpetrator strangle Clive and finish him off by smashing a rock into his face. Costa couldn't do much as the perpetrator had a weapon. The perpetrator left, but Costa remembered his face and helped the police sketch his face. Although the officers were suspicious of Costa, Illeana confirmed that Costa was not the culprit. Based on the sketch of the perpetrator, officers continued their search, until one day, they found a facial match with a tenant of the apartment. While inspecting the apartment, Illeana noticed a section of the ceiling that looked loose. Behind it, Illeana found a bag containing the victim's identity and a finger. They were also shocked by the body of a male occupant of the apartment, who turned out to be long dead. Officers later identified the man as Clark Edward, who worked on an Alaskan shipping line. He had not been reported missing, and it was discovered that the perpetrator still used his credit card for transactions. The police re-established communication with Costa, hoping he would remember something that might help the investigation. Subsequently, officers tried to locate the transaction and trace every number in the last call used by Clark Edward. They became suspicious of one number in the name of Rebecca Asher, who was called more than 20 times. Rebecca Asher is the woman who claimed to have seen her dead son Martin on the ferry. Rebecca Asher said that Martin had a twin brother named Ressi. However, at 14, Ressi died when he rescued Martin on the shore. Despite the lack of evidence, Rebecca believes Martin is related to Ressi's death, and this is the reason why Rebecca hates Martin. Since Ressi's death, Martin also began to turn violent, and when he was 16 years old, Martin ran away from home with some of Rebecca's money and jewelry. A few days later, Rebecca received news that Martin had been killed in a car accident. Upon identification, Rebecca couldn't be sure it was Martin because his face was no longer recognizable, and several body parts had separated. In reality, the man was Matt, while Martin left after exchanging his identity. Remembering that Martin had suffered a fracture in his left hand due to a fall from a bicycle, Illeana dismantled the grave to perform another autopsy, and then they confirmed that it wasn't Martin. So for safety's sake, they moved Rebecca to the foundation house, while Illeana returned home to find out more about Martin. While checking in the basement, a man who was believed to be Martin appeared from under the bed. Illeana tried to fight back, so Martin immediately went to escape. And based on the results of Illeana and her team's investigation, they found that Martin always took and lived using the victims' identities after killing them all. It happened in a chain starting with his first victim, John Doe, 20 years ago. There were 19 similar cases with the same pattern. Martin chooses victims who look like him, live alone, and away from their families. The meeting ends when they receive a report that someone has broken into Costa's art gallery. Costa said it happened quickly. He was only out for a short time, and the gallery was a mess when he returned. There, Illeana found Hart's name on the art meeting schedule. According to Costa, Hart's representatives had contacted him to buy his artwork. Illeana immediately suspects Hart as the perpetrator and is now eyeing Costa as her next target. They finally lured Hart out of his hiding place. They took Costa to a bar and gave him a communication device. But the attempt fails because Martin doesn't show up at the bar. Meanwhile, as she meets Costa, Illeana begins to realize that she is attracted to him. This worried her, as it might affect her judgment of Costa's testimony. Later that evening, they continued their efforts by attending the art show. They watched the visitors one by one, until they realized that there was a suspicious man. So they rushed to arrest the man, but unfortunately, he got out and was lost in the crowd. For the safety of the witness, they immediately moved Costa to Toronto. As Duval was putting things in the car, Hart suddenly arrived to say that this escape idea was not a good one because Costa had something he wanted.
There's a police officer outside your apartment. Understand? So I'm going to explain it to you.
Costa took advantage of the distraction to drop the perpetrator and grab the gun, but unfortunately the bullet didn't fire. Costa then screamed for help, so Duval immediately came to help Costa. Meanwhile, Illeana, who had just arrived in the courtyard, heard several gunshots. When she got upstairs, she saw that Duval was dead.
Agent Scott, officer down, 219 St. Emily.
Meanwhile, the perpetrators had gone downstairs with Costa in a car. Illeana immediately chased them from behind. When they reached the narrow road, the perpetrator's car lost control and crashed into the concrete. Fortunately, Costa survived, while Hart was badly injured. Costa took the opportunity to shoot the perpetrator with several shots before the car exploded. Costa received a few stitches on his left arm due to this incident. For what happened, Illeana and Officer Leclerc appreciated Costa's courage to fight Hart, but not Paquette, who realized that Illeana was attracted to Costa.
You did a very brave thing in that car today, Mr. Costa.
Later that evening, Costa meets Illeana. The two spent the night together. The next morning when Illeana woke up, she realized that there was blood on her body, which turned out to be from a stitched wound on Costa's left arm. Illeana therefore took Costa to the hospital to have the wound stitched back up. Soon Leclerc called Illeana and told her to accompany Rebecca to identify Hart's body in the autopsy room. Rebecca also paid close attention to the body in front of her. Rebecca also said that this man was not Martin, her son. Then Rebecca hurriedly left them. When in the elevator, suddenly from behind, someone called her mother. It turned out to be Costa. Seeing Costa before her, Rebecca immediately knew this man was her son Martin. While outside, Illeana was still waiting, but suspicions began to arise as the elevator continued to descend and never stopped. Illeana rushed down the stairs. Illeana arrives just as the elevator doors open. Still, by then, Rebecca is dead, and Illeana realizes that Costa is the culprit. Illeana went limp and couldn't believe what she was seeing. Weakly and remorsefully, she reveals that Costa is Martin, the culprit they've been looking for. They searched for Martin at the gallery, but he was gone. He is at the train station, setting his next target and identity.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Meanwhile, the officers finally learn Hart's identity. He is just a thief who sold his stolen artwork to Costa. He came to Costa to collect the money that Costa had not paid him. Costa or Martin had lured Hart to him as a diversion. On that day, Costa actually killed Hart. He used Hart's fingerprints to kill Duval, then took Hart for a drive, and deliberately crashed the right side of the car into the concrete, allowing him to survive the accident. Soon they received a transaction report for a train ticket to Mountain from Clive's credit card. The officers immediately mobilized members to the station. Meanwhile, Illeana returns to the apartment to clean up. Illeana seemed to regret everything she and Costa had done. Upon arrival at the station, officers immediately surrounded the location and began checking visitors one by one. While Illeana had made a mistake, she received a bad evaluation from the central office. So that day, Illeana received a dismissal letter from the central office. After the incident, Illeana returned to her hometown and lived away from the crowds. Months later, Illeana's belly grew. She was pregnant with Costa's child and preparing for the arrival of her baby. One day, Illeana was surprised by Martin's presence in her house. It scared Illeana, even though Martin kept asking her to calm down. The fear increased when Illeana realized that the weapons she had prepared in several places had been taken by Martin. Martin then said that he had been in this house for months. He had seen the nursery and felt the warmth of the family inside. Martin offered Illeana a happy family life with children, but Illeana refused because she did not know Martin, and the child in her womb was the son of an artist named Costa. On hearing that Martin showed his rude behavior, he hit Illeana, and then stabbed Illeana in the stomach with scissors. But it turns out that Illeana can attack Martin back with the scissors. Illeana showed Martin that her pregnancy was fake, his dismissal was fake, and her presence here was just bait to lure Martin to come to her. Martin has finally fallen into the trap of a clever strategy that Illeana has made. Illeana then reported the completion of this mission to her superiors, who then sent officers to pick up Illeana, and the movie was over. Don't forget to click subscribe, like, and comment.